Welcome to Mr. Sleep Story, where stories come alive to guide you into peaceful sleep. Tonight, we journey into the mystical worlds existing in our collection of enchanting tales, where mystery, adventure, and wonder weave together under the glow of the moon. Close your eyes, relax your mind, and let the rhythm of my voice carry you to faraway lands. Today, story begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tonight, let your worries drift away as we journey into the starry skies above, as we explore the enchanting tales behind the constellations. Stories passed down through generations, filled with wonder, mythology, and timeless wisdom. We'll begin our journey with the tale of Centaurus. Long ago, in a time when gods walked among mortals and magic flowed like rivers through the veins of the earth, there lived a being unlike any other, a centaur named Chiron. Born of the heavens and the wild earth, Chiron was no ordinary centaur. He was a creature of wisdom, grace, and profound kindness. The gods themselves revered him, for his heart burned with the fire of knowledge and his hands healed even the deepest wounds. Chiron wandered the forests and mountains, teaching humans the secrets of the stars, the healing arts, and the songs of the universe. Wherever he roamed, peace followed, as if the world itself recognized the magic within him. But, as with all tales of magic and immortals, there came a moment when fate intervened. One fateful day, as heroes gathered for a grand hunt, a poisoned arrow struck Chiron by mistake. Though the wound should have been his end, Chiron was immortal, destined to endure the agony without release. The gods, moved by his selflessness and the pain he bore, offered him a choice: to relinquish his immortality and ascend to the heavens, or to remain on earth, enduring his suffering in silence. Chiron, with the wisdom and compassion that defined him, chose to sacrifice his immortal life to free another, Prometheus, the Titan who had gifted fire to mankind. As Chiron's spirit left the earth, the heavens wept, but they could not let such a soul fade into obscurity. The gods gathered his essence and cast it into the stars, where it formed the magnificent constellation of Centaurus. Now, Centaurus gallops across the celestial sphere, a guardian of wisdom and a beacon of healing. The stars within his form shimmer with the echoes of his teachings and the kindness he shared. When you gaze upon him in the night sky, you may feel the soft hum of his magic, reminding us that knowledge, compassion, and sacrifice are the truest forms of strength. And so, the constellation Centaurus remains a tale etched in the stars, a story of a noble heart that chose to shine forever in the heavens. Beneath the shimmering veil of the night sky lies a constellation with a tale as ancient and mesmerizing as the stars themselves. The story of Scorpius, the celestial scorpion. In a time when gods ruled the cosmos and myths wove the fabric of reality, the earth was blessed by the presence of Orion, the mighty hunter. Orion was a figure of unmatched strength and beauty, boasting skills that made mortals marvel and gods whisper in admiration. Yet, with such gifts came a shadow: his pride. One day, as Orion roamed the wilds, he boasted that no creature on earth could ever match his prowess, claiming he could hunt and conquer anything the world offered. His words echoed into the heavens, reaching Gaia, the great earth goddess. Gaia, guardian of all living things, was displeased by Orion's arrogance, for she cherished even the smallest of her creations. To humble the hunter, Gaia summoned from her depths a scorpion unlike any other. This was no ordinary creature. Its stinger gleamed with a venom that could fell the mightiest of beings, and its form shimmered with an ethereal, otherworldly glow. The scorpion, silent yet fierce, was tasked with reminding Orion of the balance that must always exist between strength and humility. When the two met, the clash was inevitable. Orion, confident in his might, underestimated the scorpion's speed and cunning. As the battle raged, the scorpion struck, its stinger delivering a blow that no mortal or immortal could withstand. Orion fell, his pride subdued by the small yet powerful creature. The gods, moved by the significance of the encounter, immortalized both Orion and the scorpion in the heavens. Orion was placed on one side of the sky, a testament to his strength and the lessons learned. Scorpius, however, was set in the opposite corner, its stinger arched and ready, as if forever chasing the hunter across the celestial dome. And so, the stars of Scorpius burn brightly in the night sky, a reminder of Gaia's wisdom and the power of even the smallest creature. When you see Scorpius on a warm summer night, its tail curling through the heavens, you might feel its magic, a whisper of balance, humility, and the intricate dance of strength and respect. The scorpion's legacy, written in starlight, is one of courage and the eternal harmony of the cosmos. High above, in the shimmering expanse of the night sky, a constellation dances like a song come to life, a tale whispered by the waves and carried on the winds of eternity. This is the story of Delphinus, the celestial dolphin, whose heart is as vast as the ocean, and whose magic touches the souls of dreamers. Long ago, when the world was young and gods still walked among mortals, there lived a poet-musician named Arion. His melodies were so enchanting that even the stars seemed to sway in rhythm, and his songs were said to bring joy to the gods themselves. Arion often traveled the seas, spreading his music to distant lands and gathering treasures in return. One fateful voyage, his ship sailed beneath a sky of gold, but the hearts of the sailors were dark with greed. Coveting Arion's treasures, they plotted to take his life and steal his wealth. When their intentions were revealed, Arion pleaded for his life, asking only for one final request: to sing one last song. The sailors, charmed by his plea, agreed. Arion stood at the ship's edge, his harp glistening in the sunlight, and began to play. The notes rose and fell like waves, weaving a melody so pure that it seemed to summon the spirit of the sea itself. As he played, the waters stirred, and from the depths emerged a dolphin of silver and sapphire, its eyes sparkling with ancient wisdom. When the song ended, Arion leapt into the sea, trusting in the dolphin's grace. The celestial creature carried him upon its back, leaping through the waves with effortless beauty, as though it were riding the threads of a magical symphony. Together, they traveled far beyond the reach of the treacherous sailors, who watched in awe as their ship was swallowed by a sudden storm, a punishment from the gods. The dolphin brought Arion safely to the shores of his homeland, where he sang of his miraculous escape and the loyalty of his oceanic savior. The gods, moved by the courage of Arion and the noble heart of the dolphin, immortalized their bond in the stars. Today, the constellation Delphinus leaps joyfully across the sky, a beacon of hope, harmony, and the unbreakable bond between music, magic, and the sea. Its stars twinkle with the echoes of Arion's song, inviting all who gaze upon them to believe in the power of kindness, and the miracles hidden within the depths of the unknown. When you look to the stars and find Delphinus, may you feel the ocean's embrace and hear the distant melody of a tale that will live forever. Our next constellation soars with wings outstretched, its stars glimmering like the golden feathers of a mythical bird. This is the tale of Aquila, the celestial eagle, whose story is entwined with the gods and their divine purpose. Long ago, in the age of heroes and gods, the great king of Olympus, Zeus, sought a messenger unlike any other. He needed a creature swift as the wind, strong as the mountains, and noble enough to carry the weight of divine tasks. From the highest peaks of the heavens, Zeus called forth an eagle of unmatched beauty and power. This eagle was no ordinary bird. It was a being of celestial magic, with feathers that shimmered like molten gold and eyes that gleamed with the wisdom of the cosmos. The eagle, who would come to be known as Aquila, was a symbol of loyalty and strength, destined to serve as Zeus's sacred herald and companion. Aquila's most famous task came during one of Zeus's greatest tests for humanity. The gods had gifted fire to mankind through Prometheus, but Zeus, angered by Prometheus's defiance, sought to punish him. Yet, even in his wrath, Zeus saw the need for balance. He commanded Aquila to serve as both a reminder of the gods' power and a guardian of the gift that had been given. But Aquila's legend does not end with the gods' punishments. It is said that when Zeus fell in love with the mortal Ganymede, a prince of such beauty that even the stars seemed to bow before him, he sent Aquila to carry the boy to Olympus. With his mighty wings, Aquila swept down from the heavens, his talons as gentle as moonlight, and lifted Ganymede to the realm of the gods, where he became the cupbearer of the divine. For his unyielding loyalty and grace, Zeus immortalized Aquila among the stars, placing him in the heavens as a guardian of the skies. There, Aquila soars eternally, a symbol of strength, devotion, and the bond between the mortal and the divine. His stars form a majestic eagle in flight, his wings spread wide across the night sky, as if ready to carry the dreams of those who look up in wonder. When you see Aquila on a clear night, its brightest star, Altair, shining like a beacon, remember the eagle's timeless tale. Listen closely, and you may hear the rush of his wings in the whispers of the wind, carrying the echoes of divine stories and the promise of courage to all who dare to dream. Aquila traversed the heavens with wings, but our next constellation preferred to slither like a ribbon of light, its form mysterious and enchanting. This is the tale of Serpens, the celestial serpent, whose story winds through the realms of gods, healers, and the eternal mysteries of life and death. Long ago, in a time when mortals sought wisdom from the gods and the earth brimmed with ancient magic, there lived a healer of unmatched skill named Asclepius. Asclepius was no ordinary mortal. He was a son of Apollo, blessed with a divine touch and a heart full of compassion. He wandered the lands, curing the sick, mending the broken, and even, it is said, pulling souls back from the brink of death itself. One fateful day, as Asclepius rested beneath the shade of an olive tree, he noticed a serpent slithering near. Its emerald scales shimmered like jewels in the sunlight, and its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly intelligence. The serpent coiled itself near Asclepius, as if drawn to the healer's aura. Suddenly, another serpent appeared, carrying in its mouth an herb of radiant green. The second serpent laid the herb upon the first, and, to Asclepius's amazement, the injured serpent was healed. springing to life with renewed vitality. From this magical encounter, Asclepius learned the secrets of life and death, gaining the wisdom to wield the herb in his own healing practices. With its power, he could even defy mortality itself, restoring the lives of those who had crossed into the shadowy realm of Hades. But such power was not without consequence. The gods, ever watchful, grew uneasy. Hades, lord of the underworld, feared that Asclepius's gift would disrupt the balance of life and death. Zeus, the king of the gods, struck Asclepius down with a thunderbolt, ending his mortal journey but immortalizing his legacy. To honor the serpent's role in Asclepius's knowledge, and as a symbol of healing and renewal, Zeus placed Serpens in the sky. Unlike other constellations, Serpens is unique, split into two parts: Serpens caput, the serpent's head, and Serpens cauda, the serpent's tail. Held by the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer, said to represent Asclepius himself. Even now, Serpens slithers across the celestial sphere, a reminder of the intertwined forces of life, death, and rebirth. Its stars glimmer with the mysteries of the healer's craft, carrying the wisdom of the ancients and the eternal quest for balance in the cosmos. When you gaze upon Serpens, let its serpentine form guide your imagination to the hidden truths of the universe, where the line between mortal and divine, death and life, is as delicate as a serpent's glide across the earth. In the velvet expanse of the night sky, a mighty figure strides boldly among the stars, his belt gleaming like a jeweled crown of the heavens. This is Orion, the celestial hunter, whose tale is one of bravery, hubris, and eternal pursuit. Long ago, in an age when gods and mortals walked the same earth, Orion was born, a child of the sea god Poseidon and a mortal queen. Blessed with extraordinary strength, boundless courage, and unmatched beauty, Orion was destined for greatness. He became a hunter of legendary skill, his arrows swift and true, his presence commanding respect from all who knew him. Orion wandered the lands, seeking challenges worthy of his prowess. His adventures brought him to the court of the goddess Artemis, mistress of the hunt and protector of the wild. Together they roamed the forests and fields, their bond deepening with each shared hunt. Orion's boldness and skill even earned the admiration of Apollo, Artemis's twin brother, though the sun god secretly envied Orion's favor with his sister. But, like the brightest star, Orion's pride burned too fiercely. He declared that no creature in the world could escape his might, that his skill surpassed even the will of the gods. These words reached Gaia, the great earth goddess, who frowned upon such arrogance. To remind Orion of his place in the delicate balance of creation, Gaia summoned a scorpion of immense power, whose sting carried the fury of the earth itself. The scorpion and the hunter met in a battle that shook the heavens. Despite his strength, Orion was no match for the creature's deadly sting. As the venom coursed through him, the mighty hunter fell, his pride shattered, his life extinguished. Heartbroken by the loss of her companion, Artemis begged Zeus to honor Orion's memory. Moved by her tears, the king of the gods placed Orion among the stars, his figure forever etched into the night sky. The scorpion, too, was immortalized, becoming the constellation Scorpius, set on the opposite side of the celestial sphere. Even now, the two constellations seem locked in an eternal chase, as Scorpius rises while Orion sets. Orion's stars shine brilliantly, his belt, a line of 3 glittering jewels, serving as a guide for stargazers throughout the ages. His outstretched arm, bow in hand, points toward the heavens, as if still hunting for the adventures that eluded him in life. Look to the sky on a clear winter night, and you will see Orion, a symbol of humanity's daring spirit, and the lessons learned when pride meets humility. His story, written in the stars, is a reminder that even the mightiest must honor the balance of the cosmos. Our next constellation is one of great mystery and power. Known as Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer, it is a symbol of healing, wisdom, and the delicate balance between life and death. Its tale is one of courage, divine favor, and the eternal quest for knowledge. Long ago, in a time when the gods shaped the fates of mortals, there lived a healer named Asclepius, born of a mortal woman and Apollo, the radiant god of light and prophecy. From the moment of his birth, Asclepius was destined for greatness, carrying the gift of healing in his very soul. Taught by Chiron, the wise centaur, Asclepius learned the secrets of medicine, becoming a master of the healing arts. One fateful day, as Asclepius walked through a forest, he encountered a serpent, its scales glistening like emeralds in the sunlight. Unafraid, he watched as the serpent shed its skin, transforming itself into a renewed, vibrant form. From this act, Asclepius gained a profound understanding of the cycle of life and death, the power of transformation, and the potential for renewal. Guided by this revelation, Asclepius devoted himself to healing not only the body, but the soul. His skills grew so great that he could revive the dead, pulling souls from the underworld and restoring them to the living. This power, however, disturbed the balance of the cosmos. Hades, lord of the underworld, was enraged, for the natural order of life and death had been disrupted. Zeus, the king of the gods, intervened to preserve this balance. Striking Asclepius down with a thunderbolt, Zeus ended the healer's mortal life but honored his incredible legacy. Asclepius was placed among the stars as Ophiuchus, the serpent-bearer, holding the serpent that had gifted him the wisdom of renewal and transformation. The serpent, too, became part of the constellation, winding through Ophiuchus's hands in an eternal embrace. Together, they remind us of the duality of existence, life and death, healing and harm, chaos and order. Even now, Ophiuchus glimmers in the night sky, a silent guardian of knowledge and healing. Though not traditionally part of the zodiac's 12 signs, it stands as a symbol of the 13th path, a secret road of discovery and wisdom that not all dare to follow. When you look upon the stars of Ophiuchus, let their light inspire you to seek the mysteries of life with courage and humility. For, in his celestial form, Asclepius still holds the serpent, offering the ancient promise that even in endings, there are beginnings, and in all things, a chance for transformation. If you look high in the northern sky, where the stars glisten like scattered diamonds, you'll notice a mighty bear roaming amongst the heavens. That is Ursa Major, the great bear, whose tale is one of transformation, devotion, and the watchful eyes of the gods. Long ago, in a world where gods often mingled with mortals, there lived a maiden of extraordinary beauty named Callisto. She was a companion of the goddess Artemis, sworn to a life of purity and devotion to the hunt. Callisto's radiant spirit and graceful presence made her beloved among Artemis's followers. But her beauty also caught the attention of Zeus, the mighty king of the gods. Zeus, captivated by Callisto, descended from Olympus and approached her in disguise. Though Callisto resisted, her fate was sealed, and she bore a child, a son named Arcas. This betrayal angered Artemis, who, feeling that Callisto had broken her vows, cast her out of the sacred circle of the hunt. But the wrath of the gods was not finished. Hera, Zeus's wife, discovered the affair and burned with jealousy. To punish Callisto, Hera transformed her into a great bear, her human beauty hidden beneath thick fur and sharp claws. As a bear, Callisto wandered the forests, her heart aching with the loss of her son and her former life. Years passed, and Arcas grew into a skilled hunter, unaware of his mother's fate. One day, as he hunted in the woods, he came face to face with a massive bear. Not recognizing his mother, Arcas raised his spear, ready to strike. Zeus, watching from the heavens, could not allow such a tragic end to their story. In a flash of divine light, he swept both Callisto and Arcas into the sky, saving them from their fateful encounter. Callisto became Ursa Major, the Great Bear, her immense form stretching across the heavens. Arcas was placed nearby as Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, forever close to his mother. Hera's anger, however, was unyielding. She forbade the bears from ever resting in the waters of the ocean, and so they endlessly circle the northern sky, never dipping below the horizon. Even now, they wander the celestial sphere, their stars shining as a symbol of love, endurance, and the unbreakable bond between mother and child. When you look up at Ursa Major, with its famous 7 stars forming the Big Dipper, remember Callisto's story. Her eternal journey through the night sky is a reminder that even in the face of hardship and transformation, love remains a guiding light, shining brightly for all to see. Nestled near its larger counterpart is a constellation that carries the essence of guidance and love. This is Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, whose tale is intertwined with destiny, devotion, and the unyielding bond of family. Long ago, in a time when gods watched over the earth and the stars held the secrets of the cosmos, there lived a child named Arcas, the son of Callisto, a mortal maiden, and Zeus, the king of the gods. Though Arcas was born of divine lineage, his life was not without trials, for his mother, Callisto, had been cruelly transformed into a bear by the jealous goddess Hera. Unaware of his mother's fate, Arcas grew up strong and brave, nurtured by the nymphs and under the watchful eye of Zeus. He became a skilled hunter, his heart drawn to the forests where his mother roamed in her enchanted form. The fates of mother and son seemed forever distant, until the day their paths crossed in the wild. One fateful afternoon, as Arcas ventured deep into the woods, he came upon a great bear. It was Callisto, who, upon seeing her son, felt her heart surge with joy and sorrow. She approached him gently, her massive form moving with the grace of the love she still held. But to Arcas, this was no tender reunion. He saw only a fierce beast, and raised his spear to defend himself. Zeus, watching from the heavens, could not bear to see tragedy strike. In a burst of divine power, he swept both mother and son into the stars. Callisto became Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Arcas was transformed into Ursa Minor, the Little Bear, so they could remain together for all eternity. To honor Arcas's noble heart and his role as a guide, Zeus placed him near the North Star, the celestial beacon that helps travelers find their way. The stars of Ursa Minor form a graceful arc, culminating in Polaris, a symbol of constancy and navigation. Even now, Ursa Minor glides across the night sky, forever tethered to his mother, Ursa Major, their bond unbroken by time or distance. Together, They remind us of the enduring strength of love and the importance of finding our way home. When you look upon the little bear and see Polaris shining brightly, let it guide your heart as it has guided countless travelers through the ages. For the stars of Ursa Minor hold a timeless magic, a whisper that even in the vastness of the cosmos, love remains a steadfast light. Seek the spot in the night sky where stars glitter like the embers of ancient fires. There strides a mighty archer, bow drawn and ready, forever aiming toward the heart of the cosmos. This is Sagittarius, the archer, whose tale is steeped in bravery, wisdom, and the enduring bond between the heavens and the earth. Long ago, in an age when gods ruled the skies and heroes walked the earth, there lived a centaur named Prometheus. Unlike most centaurs, who were wild and unruly, Prometheus was known for his noble heart and boundless intellect. Born of a union between a mortal and a divine muse, Prometheus was blessed with extraordinary talents, blending the strength of his equine form with the artistry and wisdom of his divine lineage. Prometheus lived among the Muses, the goddesses of inspiration, who cherished his presence. He was not only a skilled hunter, but also a lover of the arts, crafting melodies and tales that wove beauty into the world. His arrows flew truer than any mortals, and his songs touched the hearts of gods and men alike. One day, the heavens were threatened by a fearsome beast, an ancient chaos dragon that sought to unravel the stars themselves. Its fiery breath scorched the skies, and its claws raked the fabric of the universe. The gods, knowing they needed a hero of unmatched skill, called upon Prometheus to aid them. With unwavering courage, Prometheus rode forth, his bow strung with divine arrows, each tipped with starlight. His aim was flawless, and his heart steady. In a battle that shook the heavens, he struck the dragon down, restoring balance to the cosmos and earning the eternal gratitude of the gods. To honor his bravery and artistry, Zeus immortalized Prometheus among the stars as Sagittarius, the archer. His constellation, with its mighty bow drawn, serves as a reminder of the harmony between strength and creativity, action and inspiration. Sagittarius is positioned in the sky near the galactic center, pointing his arrow toward the heart of the Milky Way, as if forever guarding the gateway to the mysteries of the universe. His stars shine brightly during the late autumn nights, guiding travelers and dreamers alike. When you look up at the constellation Sagittarius, let its bow and arrow inspire you to aim for your highest aspirations and embrace the balance of courage and creativity within your own life. For the archer's tale is a reminder that even in the vastness of the cosmos, the spirit of adventure and the pursuit of wonder are what truly light the way. In the heavens above, where the stars shine with timeless brilliance, a regal figure prowls through the night sky. A mighty lion, his mane ablaze with celestial fire. This is Leo, the lion, whose story roars with courage, power, and the enduring spirit of heroism. Long ago, in the age of gods and great deeds, there was a fearsome beast known as the Nemean lion. Born of divine origins, it was no ordinary creature. Its golden hide was impervious to weapons, and its strength unmatched by any mortal or immortal. It roamed the hills of Nemea, terrorizing the land and striking fear into the hearts of all who crossed its path. The gods decreed that only a true hero could face this formidable foe. Thus, they summoned Heracles, the greatest of all heroes, to undertake this perilous task as the first of his 12 labors. Heracles, armed with his unyielding strength and the courage of his destiny, ventured into the lion's lair, deep within a dark and foreboding cave. The battle that ensued was one of legends. Heracles quickly realized that no sword or arrow could pierce the lion's enchanted hide. Undeterred, he discarded his weapons and faced the beast with his bare hands. The earth trembled as their struggle raged, but Heracles, with his unmatched determination, overpowered the lion, strangling it with his mighty arms. Triumphant, Heracles skinned the lion using its own claws, the only tool sharp enough to cut through its magical hide. He fashioned its pelt into a cloak and its head into a helmet, wearing them as symbols of his victory and protection against future dangers. The gods, impressed by Heracles' bravery and ingenuity, immortalized the Nemean lion in the stars as the constellation Leo. There, it stands as a testament to strength, resilience, and the triumph of courage over fear. Leo's constellation shines brightest in spring, its stars forming the proud shape of a lion, with its heart marked by the brilliant star Regulus, the little king. This celestial king of beasts reminds us to embrace our inner strength and face life's challenges with determination. When you gaze upon Leo in the night sky, let its regal form inspire you to rise to your own trials with courage and grace. For the lion's tale, written in starlight, roars with the timeless message that true strength lies not only in might but in the will to overcome. Our final constellation of the night is one whose story is steeped in heroism, sacrifice, and divine favor. This is Aries, the ram, whose story is woven from golden threads of courage and salvation. Long ago, in a kingdom ruled by jealousy and deceit, there lived a boy and a girl, Phrixus and Helle, the children of a mortal king. Their stepmother, Queen Ino, burned with envy toward them, and sought to destroy them to secure the throne for her own children. She devised a cruel plot, convincing the king that Phrixus and Helle must be sacrificed to end a famine she herself had caused. The desperate children prayed for deliverance, and their cries reached the heavens. Zeus, moved by their innocence, sent a magical ram with a golden fleece, a creature born of the gods and imbued with celestial power. The golden ram descended from the sky, its shimmering coat glowing like molten sunlight, and carried Phrixus and Helle upon its back, soaring high above the earth to safety. As they crossed the seas, tragedy struck. Helle lost her grip and fell into the waters below, which became known as the Hellespont in her memory. Though grief-stricken, the golden ram pressed onward, carrying Phrixus to the distant land of Colchis. There, the ram brought him safely to the court of King Aeetes, where Phrixus was welcomed and given refuge. In gratitude to the gods and the ram that saved him, Phrixus offered the golden ram as a sacred gift to Zeus. Its magnificent fleece was hung in a sacred grove, guarded by a fearsome dragon, and would later become the prize sought by Jason and the Argonauts in their legendary quest for the Golden Fleece. Zeus, to honor the ram's bravery and its role in saving Phrixus and Helle, placed it among the stars as the constellation Aries. Its stars form the shape of a ram's proud head, its light a beacon of hope, courage, and divine protection. Today, Aries shines brightly in the springtime sky, its brightest star, Hamal, marking the ram's noble spirit. The constellation reminds us of the power of resilience and the divine aid that can arrive when we face life's greatest challenges with faith and courage. When you look to the stars and find Aries, let its golden light guide your heart, reminding you that even in moments of peril, the heavens may send their magic to carry you to safety. Thank you for joining me tonight on this journey through the constellations. I hope these timeless stories have brought you a sense of peace and wonder. Remember, the stars above are always there, watching over us, carrying their stories across the vast expanse of the night sky. And just like them, you are a part of something infinite and beautiful. If you enjoyed tonight's stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you'll never miss another calming tale. Your next adventure and relaxation is just around the corner. Sweet dreams, and I'll see you again soon. Tonight, we journey into the mystical world of 1001 Nights, a timeless collection of enchanting tales where mystery, adventure, and wonder weave together under the glow of the moon. The story of King Shahryar and his brother. It is related, but Allah alone is all-knowing, that there once lived in the farthest reaches of the lands 2 kings who were brothers. The elder, King Shahryar, ruled over a vast empire, while the younger, King Shah Zaman, governed the neighboring kingdom. One day, King Shahryar felt a longing to see his brother, whom he had not visited in years. He sent his trusted vizier to invite King Shah Zaman to his court. Overjoyed, Shah Zaman prepared for the journey. However, before departing, he returned to his palace unannounced to bid farewell to his wife. To his horror, he found her in the arms of another man. Devastated, Shah Zaman struck them down in a fit of rage and abandoned the palace. When Shah Zaman arrived at his brother's kingdom, his sorrow was evident. King Shahryar welcomed him with great hospitality, but the younger king remained distraught. Shahryar, noticing his brother's melancholy, inquired about its cause. At first, Shah Zaman kept silent, but eventually confessed his heartbreak. One day, as Shah Zaman gazed from his chamber, he witnessed a shocking sight in Shahryar's garden. The queen and her maids consorting with strangers. Realizing that even Shahryar was not spared betrayal, Shah Zaman's grief lightened, and he shared what he had seen with his brother. Enraged, Shahryar devised a plan. He executed the queen and her companions, vowing never to trust women again. He then embarked on a tyrannical practice. Each day, he would marry a new bride and execute her the following morning to avoid betrayal. This cruel cycle continued until Shahrazad, the daughter of the royal vizier, offered to marry the king. Despite her father's pleas, she insisted, saying, "Perhaps I can end this bloodshed and save the women of our land." On their wedding night, Shahrazad began to tell the king a tale, but as dawn approached, she stopped at a suspenseful moment. Captivated, the king spared her life to hear the rest of the story the next evening. Thus began the legendary 1001 Nights, with Shahrazad weaving tale after tale to delay her fate, and, in doing so, soften the king's heart. Shahrazad, before going to the king, had devised a clever plan. She spoke to her younger sister, Dunyazad, and said, "When I am with the king, I will summon you to my chamber before dawn. Ask me to tell a story, and I will begin one that will capture his attention. If Allah wills, this will be our salvation." That night, Shahrazad was taken to the king's chambers. As expected, King Shahryar prepared for her fate the following morning. But before dawn broke, Shahrazad wept and said, "O king, I have one last request. May I bid farewell to my beloved sister and share one final tale before I die?" The king, intrigued by her courage and beauty, agreed. Dunyazad was brought in, and she said, "Sister, if you are not too weary, please tell us one of your delightful stories to pass this last hour." With the king's permission, Shahrazad began. Once upon a time, there was a wealthy merchant who traveled far and wide, conducting his trade. One day, as he journeyed through a desert, he sat beneath a tree to rest and eat. He took out some dates, ate them, and threw the pits on the ground. Suddenly, a mighty genie appeared before him, wielding a gleaming sword. "Prepare to die," roared the genie. Terrified, the merchant asked, "What have I done to deserve this fate?" The genie replied, "You have killed my son. When you threw the date pits, one of them struck my boy and ended his life. Now I must take yours in return." The merchant pleaded for mercy, explaining that his act was unintentional. But the genie was unmoved and raised his sword to strike. The merchant begged, "Grant me a final wish. Allow me to return home to settle my affairs, bid farewell to my family, and pay my debts. I promise to return here in 1 year's time to accept my fate." The genie considered and agreed, binding the merchant by a solemn oath. The merchant returned home, put his affairs in order, and spent a sorrowful year with his family. When the year ended, he bid them farewell, and set out to meet the genie, resigned to his fate. As he waited under the same tree, 3 old men approached, each accompanied by a strange creature. They asked why he was there, and the merchant told his story. The first old man said, "Let us come with you to see this genie. Perhaps we can help." When the genie appeared, the first old man said, "O mighty genie, I will tell you a story so marvelous that if you find it more wondrous than the crime of this merchant, will you spare his life?" The genie agreed, and the first old man began his tale. As Shahrazad concluded this portion of the story, dawn broke. She stopped speaking and said, "The rest of the tale will have to wait until tomorrow night." King Shahryar, eager to hear the conclusion, spared her life for 1 more day. The next day, her story continued with the first old man's tale. "Know, O mighty genie, that this gazelle you see with me is no ordinary animal but my wife. Many years ago, she was a beautiful and cunning woman, skilled in magic but lacking in virtue. We lived together peacefully for many years, though we remained childless. Desiring an heir, I took a concubine, and she bore me a son who became the light of my life. My wife, consumed by jealousy, turned her dark powers against us. One day, when I was away on business, she transformed my son into a calf, and the concubine into a cow. Upon my return, she presented the animals to me and said they were a gift. I, suspecting nothing, accepted them. That year, I decided to sacrifice the cow during the feast. But when I tried to slaughter her, she wept so bitterly that I couldn't bring myself to do it. I ordered my servant to carry out the task, but when the cow was slaughtered, no meat was found on her bones, a sign of my wife's evil magic. Saddened, but still unaware of the truth, I turned my attention to the calf. The animal ran to me, licking my hands and feet as though begging for mercy. I was moved by its behavior and decided to spare its life. Instead, I gave it to a herdsman to raise. Months later, the herdsman came to me and said, "My lord, the calf you gave me behaves most strangely. It refuses to eat or drink when I am away, but grows lively and joyful when I am near. I suspect something unusual about this animal." Intrigued, I took the calf to a skilled sorceress for examination. She chanted a spell, and before my eyes, the calf transformed into my son. I wept with joy and gratitude, but my happiness was short-lived as I realized the extent of my wife's treachery. The sorceress, moved by my story, promised to help further. She cast a spell to turn my wicked wife into this gazelle you see before you. Since then, I have traveled with her as a reminder of her punishment, and a warning to others of the consequences of envy and malice. When the first old man finished his tale, the genie said, "Your story is indeed marvelous. I shall grant the merchant a third of his life." The second old man stepped forward and said, "O genie, I too have a tale more wondrous than the last. If you will listen, I will tell it to you." The genie agreed, and the second old man began his tale. The second old man began his tale. "O mighty genie, this dog you see with me is not an ordinary animal, but my own brother. He has been enchanted as punishment for his wickedness, and this is how it came to pass. We were 3 brothers, born to a wealthy merchant. When our father passed, he left us a considerable fortune, which we divided equally. My 2 brothers squandered their shares on foolish ventures, while I prospered through hard work and diligence. Envious of my success, they hatched a plot to destroy me. One day they came to me, feigning remorse for their past mistakes and asking for my help. Being a kind-hearted man, I gave them a large portion of my wealth, and even invited them to travel with me on a trading journey. They agreed, and we set off together. During our journey, we came across a distant land where I saw a beautiful woman who captured my heart. I married her, and we continued our travels. My brothers, however, grew envious once more, and their jealousy turned to treachery. While we were at sea, they threw me overboard, hoping to steal my wealth and claim my wife as their own. But by the grace of Allah, I was not destined to perish. I was saved by a magical being who carried me to safety on a distant shore. There, I discovered that my wife was no ordinary woman, but a powerful sorceress. She had sensed my brother's evil intent and rescued me with her magic. Enraged by their treachery, she transformed my brothers into dogs and warned me to stay away from them forever. For 10 years, they have wandered the land in this form, seeking my forgiveness. Eventually, I took pity on them and asked my wife to reverse the spell. She agreed, but only if they truly repented for their deeds. One brother showed sincere remorse and was restored to human form, but this one, he gestured to the dog, remains under the enchantment, for his heart is still filled with malice. And so, O genie, this is the story of how my brother came to be as you see him today." When the second old man finished his tale, the genie said, "Your story is indeed marvelous. I shall grant the merchant a further third of his life." Then the third old man stepped forward and said, "O genie, I too have a tale even more wondrous than the first 2. If you will listen, I will tell it to you." The genie agreed, and the third old man began his tale. The third old man began his tale. "O mighty genie, this mule you see with me is my wife. She was transformed into this creature because of her betrayal, and here is the story. I was a merchant who spent my days traveling far and wide, conducting trade. During one of my journeys, I entrusted my wife with the care of our home and wealth. For many years, I believed her to be a loyal and virtuous woman, but I was gravely mistaken. Unbeknownst to me, she had taken a lover during my absences. When I returned from one of my travels, I learned of her deceit from a servant who could no longer bear to watch her wickedness. Devastated, I confronted her, but she denied everything and accused the servant of lying. That same evening, I caught her and her lover in the act. Overcome with rage, I attempted to punish her, but she was no ordinary woman. She was skilled in magic. Before I could act, she cast a spell upon me, transforming me into a monstrous beast. For many months, I roamed the wilderness, unable to speak or defend myself. Finally, I encountered a shepherd who took pity on me and brought me to a wise and powerful sorceress. The sorceress saw through my enchantment and cast a counterspell, restoring me to my human form. She then gave me a choice: punish my wife or forgive her. I chose to confront my wife one last time. When I returned home, she was enraged to see me alive and attempted to cast another spell. But the sorceress had anticipated this and protected me. My wife's spell backfired, transforming her into this mule you see before you. The sorceress advised me to keep her in this form as a reminder of her treachery. Since that day, I have traveled with her as my companion, and she has repented every step of the way. The old man concluded his tale and said, "And now, O genie, you have heard my story. Is it not more marvelous than the others?" The genie, amazed by the third tale, said, "Indeed, your story is extraordinary. I shall grant the merchant the final third of his life and spare him entirely. You have all earned his salvation." With that, the genie vanished, leaving the merchant and the three old men to rejoice in their good fortune. They thanked one another and went their separate ways, forever bound by the remarkable tales that had saved a life. As Shahrazad concluded this story, dawn broke once more. She fell silent and said, "If the king permits, I will tell another tale tomorrow night that is even more wondrous than this." Eager to hear more, King Shahryar spared her life for another day. That evening, when the night grew quiet and the stars lit up the sky, Shahrazad began another tale to captivate King Shahryar. The Tale of the Fisherman and the Genie. Once upon a time, there was a poor fisherman who cast his net into the sea every day, hoping to catch enough to feed his family. Though his heart was kind and his labor honest, fortune seldom favored him. One morning, after casting his net 3 times and pulling up only weeds and shells, the fisherman prayed to Allah for a blessing. On his 4th cast, the net felt unusually heavy. Excited, he hauled it to shore and found a strange brass jar, sealed with lead and stamped with the symbol of King Solomon. Curious, the fisherman thought. Surely this jar contains something of great value. He broke the seal and opened the jar, but to his horror, thick black smoke poured out and swirled into the sky. The smoke coalesced into a fearsome genie, towering above him with glowing eyes. The genie roared, "Bow before me, for I am a mighty spirit imprisoned by King Solomon. For centuries, I vowed to reward anyone who freed me from this jar. But as the years passed and no one came, my anger grew. Now I swear to kill whoever releases me." The fisherman trembled and begged for mercy. "I released you from your prison. Should you not reward me instead of punishing me?" The genie sneered. "It is too late. Prepare to die." Thinking quickly, the fisherman said, "Before I meet my end, I must ask one question. How could someone as mighty as you be trapped inside such a small jar?" The genie laughed. "Foolish mortal, do you doubt my power? Watch, and I will show you." The genie transformed back into smoke and poured himself into the jar to demonstrate. The fisherman seized his chance. He grabbed the lid and resealed the jar, trapping the genie once more. The genie screamed in fury, but the fisherman said, "You swore to kill me, though I freed you. Now you shall remain in this jar forever and be thrown back into the sea." The genie pleaded for release, promising not to harm the fisherman. At first, the fisherman refused, but the genie eventually swore a solemn oath to reward him. Reluctantly, the fisherman unsealed the jar. True to his word, the genie spared the fisherman and led him to a lake with 4 magical fish of dazzling colors: gold, silver, blue, and red. The genie said, "Cast your net here and take these fish to the king. They will bring you great fortune." The fishermen obeyed and presented the fish to the palace. The king, enchanted by their beauty, summoned his cook to prepare them. But when the cook placed the fish on the fire, a mysterious voice called out from the pan, "Spare us. We are not meant to be eaten." The king, astonished, summoned the fisherman to explain. The fisherman recounted his encounter with the genie, and the king ordered him to guide his men to the magical lake. Upon reaching the lake, the king discovered that it was surrounded by ruins of an ancient city. Curious, he explored further and stumbled upon a magnificent palace where a mysterious prince sat on a throne, weeping. The prince explained his tragic tale. He had once ruled a prosperous kingdom, but an enchantress cursed him and his people. She transformed the citizens into the lake's colorful fish and left him alone in despair. Moved by the prince's sorrow, the king vowed to break the enchantment and restore the kingdom. With the help of his court magician, the king confronted the enchantress and defeated her, lifting the curse. The lake vanished, and the kingdom returned to its former glory. The fishermen, now honored and wealthy, lived happily ever after, while the prince regained his throne. As Shahrazad concluded the tale, dawn broke once more. She paused and said, "If the king permits, I will tell another tale tomorrow night that is even more wondrous than this." Eager for more stories, King Shahryar spared her life again. That evening, when the stars shone brightly above the palace, Shahrazad resumed her storytelling to the ever-curious King Shahryar. The Tale of the Porter and the Three Ladies of Baghdad. Once upon a time, in the city of Baghdad, there was a poor porter who earned his living carrying goods for hire. One day, as he stood in the marketplace, a beautiful veiled woman approached him and said, "Porter, take your basket and follow me." The porter, captivated by her beauty, gladly followed. The woman stopped at a wine merchant's shop and bought a variety of fine wines, then handed them to the porter. She continued to other shops, purchasing delicious fruits, nuts, and delicacies, which she added to his basket. Finally, she bought flowers and perfume. When the porter's basket was full, she said, "Follow me to my home." The porter followed her to a grand house with a large door. She knocked, and another veiled woman, even more beautiful than the first, opened it. Together, they invited him inside. The porter was amazed by the luxurious home, filled with fine furniture and beautiful tapestries. Soon, a third woman, even more enchanting than the first two, joined them. The three women welcomed the porter and offered him wine, food, and music. They told him he could relax and enjoy himself, but on one condition. He must not ask about their lives or the secrets of their home. The porter agreed, and the festivities began. As the wine flowed and the music played, the porter's curiosity grew. Finally, emboldened by drink, he asked, "O gracious ladies, forgive me, but I must ask, what is the story behind your lives and this wondrous home?" The women's faces darkened, and they warned him, "Do not ask questions about what does not concern you, or you will hear what you will not like." Before the porter could apologize, there was a knock at the door. One of the women opened it to reveal 3 dervishes, men dressed as wandering monks, each with a shaved head and blind in one eye. They bowed and asked for shelter for the night. The women welcomed them in with the same condition: no questions about their lives. Not long after, another knock sounded. This time, it was the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, disguised as a merchant, accompanied by his vizier and a bodyguard. They, too, sought shelter, and the women extended their hospitality. As the night continued, the guests enjoyed fine food and drink. But like the porter, their curiosity grew. Despite the women's warnings, they began to ask about the mysterious household and its secrets. The women, angered by their persistence, called for whips and prepared to punish their guests. Before they could strike, the Caliph revealed his identity and demanded an explanation. The women, now knowing their guest was the ruler of Baghdad, bowed and agreed to tell their stories. Shahrazad paused as dawn approached and said, "If the king permits, I will reveal the stories of the 3 women and the dervishes tomorrow night, for they are tales of wonder and sorrow." Eager to hear more, King Shahryar spared her life for another day. The following night she began with The Tale of the First Woman. I was born into a wealthy and noble family. My father, a prominent merchant, arranged for me to marry a man of high rank. For many years we lived happily, and I believed him to be the most loyal and loving of husbands. One day, I overheard a conversation between my husband and a stranger, and, to my horror, I discovered he was plotting to steal my fortune and abandon me. I confronted him, and instead of showing remorse, he grew enraged. He bound me in chains and sold me to a slave trader. I was taken far from my homeland, where I was purchased by a kind and generous man who freed me and gave me this house as a safe haven. Since that day, I have lived here with my sisters, away from the treachery of men. When she finished, the Caliph turned to the second woman, who began her story. The Tale of the Second Woman. I, too, was once married to a man I believed to be kind and faithful. We were deeply in love, or so I thought. One day, while traveling to visit family, we were set upon by robbers. My husband, instead of protecting me, fled and left me at their mercy. The robbers took me to their hideout, where I feared for my life. But their leader, a noble-hearted man, took pity on me and protected me. He eventually helped me escape and return home. When I arrived, I found that my husband had declared me dead and remarried. Heartbroken, I sought refuge with my sister, the first woman, and vowed never to trust men again. Her tale ended, and the Caliph turned to the third woman who had been silent until now. The Tale of the Third Woman. My story is perhaps the strangest of all. I was once married to a wealthy merchant who showered me with love and gifts. But despite his generosity, I felt he kept secrets from me. One day, I discovered a locked door in our home that I had never seen before. My curiosity overwhelmed me, and when my husband was away, I found the key and opened the door. To my shock, inside was a magical garden filled with golden trees, singing birds, and a fountain that sparkled like diamonds. As I stepped into the garden, a powerful enchantment took hold of me, and I was unable to leave. My husband returned, furious that I had discovered his secret. He cursed me and left me there to wander the garden for years. Eventually, a kind sorcerer broke the enchantment and set me free. I returned to my sisters, and we decided to live together in this house, bound by our shared sorrows. When the women finished their tales, the 3 dervishes stepped forward to share their own stories. The tale of the first dervish. I was once a prince, the heir to a great kingdom. But my happiness was short-lived, as my uncle betrayed my father and usurped the throne. I fled for my life, disguising myself as a dervish to avoid detection. During my travels, I came upon a strange cave where I found an enchanted chest. Inside was a woman who claimed to be cursed by a genie. She begged me to help her, but before I could act, the genie returned and, in his rage, struck me blind in one eye. Since that day, I have wandered the world as you see me now, seeking a way to restore my sight and reclaim my kingdom. The caliph and his companions were amazed by the tales and promised to hear the stories of the other 2 dervishes the following night. At this point, Shahrazad paused, for dawn had broken. She said, "If the king permits, I will continue the tales of the dervishes tomorrow night, for they hold even more wonders." Eager to hear more, King Shahryar spared her life for another day. The Tale of the Second Dervish. The second dervish began his tale. I, too, was once a prince, destined to inherit a mighty kingdom. My life was full of luxury and promise, but fate had other plans. One day, my father received news of a powerful neighboring king who sought an alliance through marriage. The king offered his daughter's hand to me, and my father agreed. With great ceremony, I traveled to the neighboring land to meet my bride. She was as beautiful as the moon, and I fell deeply in love with her. However, on the night of our wedding, disaster struck. As we celebrated, an enormous winged creature, a mighty roc, descended from the skies, snatched my bride, and carried her away. I was devastated and vowed to rescue her, no matter the cost. I set out on a perilous journey, facing storms, wild beasts, and endless deserts. After many months, I reached a distant island where I found the roc perched on a high cliff. Below it was a cavern, and inside the cavern, I found my bride. She told me she had been enchanted by a sorcerer who controlled the roc. With her guidance, I confronted the sorcerer and struck him down. But as I freed her, the enchantment he had cast took hold of me, and I was blinded in one eye. Grateful for her rescue, my bride returned to her father's kingdom, but I could not remain there. Ashamed of my condition, I left my homeland and have wandered ever since as a dervish, seeking solace for my loss. The dervish finished his tale, and the caliph turned to the third dervish, who began his story. The Tale of the Third Dervish. I, too, was born to royalty. My father was a great king who ruled over a prosperous land. From a young age, I was trained in the arts of war and governance, destined to inherit the throne. But, as fate would have it, my life took a tragic turn. One day, while hunting in the forest, I encountered a mysterious woman of extraordinary beauty. She claimed to be a princess who had been cursed by an evil magician. Enchanted by her tale, I vowed to help her and took her back to my palace. For a time, all seemed well. She became my companion, and I began to fall in love with her. But one night, I awoke to find her standing over me, holding a dagger. "Why would you betray me?" I cried. She laughed and revealed her true nature. She was no princess, but a sorceress sent by my enemies to destroy me. With a wave of her hand, she cast a spell that left me blind in one eye and banished me from my kingdom. I wandered aimlessly until I joined the Brotherhood of Dervishes, where I found solace among others who had suffered great misfortune. Together, we have roamed the world, seeking redemption and purpose. When the third dervish finished his tale, the Caliph was deeply moved. He turned to the three sisters and asked why they had warned their guests not to ask questions. The eldest sister replied, "We imposed this condition because our lives are full of sorrow, and revisiting these tales brings us great pain. But now that our secrets are revealed, we hope for peace and understanding." The Caliph, impressed by their honesty and resilience, decreed that they should be rewarded. He invited them to his palace, where they were given wealth and protection. The dervishes, too, were offered positions in the royal court. As for the porter, he returned to his humble life, grateful for the adventure he had been part of. As dawn approached, Shahrazad paused and said, "If the king permits, I will tell another tale tomorrow night that is even more wondrous and captivating." Eager to hear more, King Shahryar spared her life once again. As the next night fell, King Shahryar eagerly awaited Shahrazad's storytelling. With her calm, soothing voice, she began. The Tale of the Ensorcelled Prince. Once upon a time, there was a great king who had a son of remarkable beauty and wisdom. This prince was loved by his people and admired by all who met him. One day, the prince married a woman of extraordinary beauty and charm. He loved her deeply and trusted her with his whole heart. For several years, they lived in happiness and harmony. But unbeknownst to the prince, his wife was harboring a dark secret. She had fallen in love with a slave, and the two would meet in secret whenever the prince was away. One day, the prince discovered their betrayal. Heartbroken and enraged, he confronted his wife. Instead of showing remorse, she turned to black magic. She cast a powerful spell on the prince, transforming the lower half of his body into stone, leaving him half man and half statue. Unable to move or walk, the prince was left helpless in his own palace. The treacherous wife then took control of the kingdom, ruling it with cruelty and deceit. The prince's misery grew each day until a kind sorcerer visited the palace. The sorcerer, seeing the prince's plight, vowed to help. He told the prince, "To break this curse, I will need to confront your wife and undo her magic. But it will require great courage and patience from you." The sorcerer disguised himself as a wandering dervish and approached the queen. Using his wisdom and cunning, he tricked her into revealing the secrets of her spell. Once he learned how to reverse the enchantment, he cast a powerful counterspell. The queen was defeated and her magic unraveled. The prince was restored to his full form, and his kingdom was freed from her tyranny. Grateful for his freedom, the prince rewarded the sorcerer and vowed to rule with justice and compassion, never allowing such betrayal to take hold again. As Shahrazad paused, dawn broke, and she said, "If the king permits, I will tell another tale tomorrow night, even more wondrous than this." King Shahryar, mesmerized by her storytelling, spared her life for another day. As the following night fell, Shahrazad once again began her tale. The stars glittered in the night sky, and King Shahryar sat eagerly to listen. She said, The Tale of the Three Apples. In the ancient city of Baghdad, during the reign of Caliph Harun al-Rashid, there lived a poor fisherman. One day, after casting his net repeatedly without success, he pulled in a heavy, locked chest. Excited by his find, he brought it to the palace and presented it to the Caliph, hoping for a reward. The Caliph ordered the chest to be opened, and inside they found a woman's body cut into pieces. Horrified, the Caliph summoned his vizier, Jafar, and said, "You must find the murderer within 3 days, or you will be executed in their place." Jafar, though loyal and wise, was overcome with fear. He had no idea how to solve the mystery. For 3 days, he searched fruitlessly. When the deadline arrived, he prepared for his execution. As he stood before the Caliph, ready to accept his fate, a man rushed into the palace shouting, "I am the murderer. Spare Jafar and punish me instead." The Caliph demanded an explanation. The man said, "This woman was my wife. I loved her dearly, but one day she fell ill. To lift her spirits, I bought her 3 apples from a merchant, for which I paid a great sum. When I returned home, I found her recovering and gave her the apples. However, some days later, I saw a slave holding one of the apples. He claimed my wife had given it to him. Enraged by her betrayal, I confronted her, and she denied any wrongdoing. But in my fury, I did not listen and killed her. I now regret my actions deeply." As the man wept, a young boy approached the Caliph and said, "O mighty Caliph, do not punish my father, for he is innocent." Startled, the Caliph asked the boy to explain. The boy said, "I took one of the apples from my mother without her knowledge. While playing in the street, I showed it to a slave, who then snatched it from me and claimed my mother had given it to him. It was my foolishness that caused this tragedy." The Caliph, realizing the truth, spared the man and punished the slave instead. He then pardoned Jafar and commended him for his service. Shahrazad paused as dawn approached. She said, "If the king permits, I will tell another tale tomorrow night that will surpass even this one in wonder." King Shahryar, entranced, spared her life once more. As the next night descended, Shahrazad began her tale once more, her voice soothing and entrancing. The Tale of Nur al-Din and Shams al-Din. In a distant city, there lived 2 brothers, Nur al-Din and Shams al-Din, both sons of a noble and wealthy vizier. Before his death, their father divided his fortune equally between them and made them promise to care for each other. For many years, they lived harmoniously. However, one day, they quarreled over their future. Shams al-Din, the elder brother, argued that they should arrange marriages for their children once they were born, ensuring that the family's wealth and honor remained intact. Nur al-Din disagreed, claiming such plans were foolish since neither had yet married or had children. Their argument escalated, and Shams al-Din grew angry. He insulted Nur al-Din, belittling him in front of their servants. Feeling humiliated, Nur al-Din left the city, vowing never to return. He traveled for many days and eventually reached a distant land. There, he befriended a kind merchant who helped him establish a new life. Soon, Nur al-Din married a beautiful and virtuous woman, and they had a son whom they named Badr al-Din. Years passed, and Nur al-Din's fortunes grew. Meanwhile, back in his homeland, Shams al-Din had also married and fathered a daughter named Sit al-Husn, famed for her unparalleled beauty. True to his word, Shams al-Din planned to arrange a marriage for his daughter, but he still held resentment toward his brother. The fate of Badr al-Din. When Badr al-Din came of age, tragedy struck. Nur al-Din passed away. Left to fend for himself, Badr al-Din set out on a journey to find his uncle, Shams al-Din, unaware of the bitterness that still lingered. As fate would have it, Badr al-Din arrived in his uncle's city on the night of Sit al-Husain's wedding. However, the groom, chosen by Shams al-Din, fled the city out of fear, leaving the bride without a husband. The Caliph, upon hearing of this misfortune, decreed that Sit al-Husain must be married that very night. Desperate, Shams al-Din searched for a replacement groom. By chance, he encountered Badr al-Din, who bore a striking resemblance to his late brother. Without knowing Badr al-Din's identity, Shams al-Din brought him to the palace and arranged for him to marry Sit al-Husain. After the wedding, a strange series of events occurred. A mischievous genie, intrigued by the couple's fate, cast a spell that transported Badr al-Din far away, leaving Sit al-Husain alone. For many years, Badr al-Din wandered, unaware that he had a wife or that his uncle was the one who had arranged the marriage. Meanwhile, Sit al-Husain gave birth to a son, who grew up without knowing his father. Eventually, fate brought Badr al-Din back to his homeland, where he encountered his son by chance. The resemblance between them was undeniable, and through a series of revelations, the truth of his identity was uncovered. Shams al-Din, realizing the cruelty of his past actions, reconciled with his nephew and welcomed him back into the family. Badr al-Din and Sit al-Husain were reunited, and they lived happily ever after, their love and family bonds stronger than ever. As dawn approached, Shahrazad fell silent and said, "If the king permits, I will tell another tale tomorrow night, one filled with even greater wonders." King Shahryar, captivated, spared her life for yet another day. And so, the tales of 1001 Nights fade into the quiet of the night, leaving behind whispers of adventure and wonder. I hope this story has brought you closer to a peaceful and restful sleep. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime stories to soothe your soul. Your support helps keep these magical tales alive. Sweet dreams, and until next time, may your dreams be bright and your heart be light. Good night. Marley was dead, to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change, for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Mind. I don't mean to say that I know, of my own knowledge, what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined, myself, to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. But the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat, emphatically, that Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend and sole mourner. And even Scrooge was not so dreadfully cut up by the sad event, but that he was an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and solemnized it with an undoubted bargain. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point I started from. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. If we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night, in an easterly wind, upon his own ramparts, than there would be in any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot, say St. Paul's churchyard, for instance, literally to astonish his son's weak mind. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people new to the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. But he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret and self-contained, and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days, and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say, with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though they said, "No eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master." But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked. To edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance, was what the knowing ones call nuts to Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather, foggy withal, and he could hear the people in the court outside go wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon their breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. The city clocks had only just gone 3, but it was quite dark already. It had not been light all day, and candles were flaring in the windows of the neighboring offices, like ruddy smears upon the palpable brown air. The fog came pouring in at every chink and keyhole, and was so dense without that although the court was of the narrowest, the houses opposite were mere phantoms. To see the dingy cloud come drooping down, obscuring everything, one might have thought that nature lived hard by, and was brewing on a large scale. The door of Scrooge's counting-house was open that he might keep his eye upon his clerk, who, in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so very much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room, and so surely as the clerk came in with the shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of a strong imagination, he failed. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation he had of his approach. "Bah!" said Scrooge. "Humbug!" He had so heated himself with rapid walking in the fog and frost, this nephew of Scrooge's, that he was all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome, his eyes sparkled, and his breath smoked again. "Christmas a humbug, Uncle," said Scrooge's nephew. "You don't mean that, I am sure." "I do," said Scrooge. "Merry Christmas. What right have you to be merry? What reason have you to be merry? You're poor enough." "Come then," returned the nephew gaily. "What right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be morose? You're rich enough." Scrooge, having no better answer ready on the spur of the moment, said, "Bah!" again, and followed it up with, "Humbug." "Don't be cross, Uncle," said the nephew. "What else can I be," returned the uncle, "when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer. A time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen of months presented dead against you." "If I could work my will," said Scrooge indignantly, "every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding, and buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should." "Uncle!" pleaded the nephew. "Nephew," returned the uncle sternly, "keep Christmas in your own way and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it," repeated Scrooge's nephew, "but you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone, then," said Scrooge. "Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you." "There are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say," returned the nephew. "Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it has come round, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time. The only time I know of, in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good, and will do me good, and I say, God bless it." The clerk in the tank involuntarily applauded. Becoming immediately sensible of the impropriety, he poked the fire and extinguished the last frail spark forever. "Let me hear another sound from you," said Scrooge, "and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir," he added, turning to his nephew. "I wonder you don't go into Parliament." "Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow." Scrooge said that he would see him. Yes, indeed he did. He went the whole length of the expression, and said that he would see him in that extremity first. "But why?" cried Scrooge's nephew. "Why?" "Why did you get married?" said Scrooge. "Because I fell in love." "Because you fell in love," growled Scrooge, as if that were the only one thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. "Good afternoon." "Nay, uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming now?" "Good afternoon," said Scrooge. "I want nothing from you. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends?" "Good afternoon," said Scrooge. "I am sorry, with all my heart, to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I have been a party. But I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle." "Good afternoon," said Scrooge, "and a Happy New Year." "Good afternoon," said Scrooge. His nephew left the room without an angry word, notwithstanding. He stopped at the outer door to bestow the greetings of the season on the clerk, who, cold as he was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them cordially. "There's another fellow," muttered Scrooge, who overheard him. "My clerk, with 15 shillings a week and a wife and family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam." This lunatic, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands and bowed to him. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. "Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?" "Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years," Scrooge replied. "He died 7 years ago, this very night. We have no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner," said the gentleman, presenting his credentials. It certainly was, for they had been 2 kindred spirits. At the ominous word liberality, Scrooge frowned and shook his head, and handed the credentials back. "At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, taking up a pen, "it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir." "Are there no prisons?" asked Scrooge. "Plenty of prisons," said the gentleman, laying down the pen again. "And the union workhouses?" demanded Scrooge. "Are they still in operation?" "They are." "Still," returned the gentleman, "I wish I could say they were not." "The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigor, then," said Scrooge. "Both very busy, sir." "Oh, I was afraid, from what you said at first, that something had occurred to stop them in their useful course," said Scrooge. "I'm very glad to hear it." "Under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to the multitude," returned the gentleman. "A few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink, and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?" "Nothing," Scrooge replied. "You wish to be anonymous?" "I wish to be left alone," said Scrooge. "Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the establishments I have mentioned. They cost enough. and those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there, and many would rather die. If they would rather die, said Scrooge, they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Besides, excuse me, I don't know that. But you might know it, observed the gentleman. It's not my business, Scrooge returned. It's enough for a man to understand his own business and not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Seeing clearly that it would be useless to pursue their point, the gentlemen withdrew. Scrooge resumed his labors with an improved opinion of himself, and in a more facetious temper than was usual with him. Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thickened so that people ran about with flaring links, proffering their services to go before horses in carriages and conduct them on their way. The ancient tower of a church, whose gruff old bell was always peeping slyly down at Scrooge out of a Gothic window in the wall, became invisible, and struck the hours and quarters in the clouds, with tremulous vibrations afterwards, as if its teeth were chattering in its frozen head up there. The cold became intense. In the main street at the corner of the court, some laborers were repairing the gas pipes, and had lighted a great fire in a brazier, round which a party of ragged men and boys were gathered, warming their hands and winking their eyes before the blaze in rapture. The water plug being left in solitude, its overflowings sullenly congealed, and turned to misanthropic ice. The brightness of the shops, where holly sprigs and berries crackled in the lamp heat of the windows, made pale faces ruddy as they passed. Poulterers' and grocers' trades became a splendid joke, a glorious pageant, with which it was next to impossible to believe that such dull principles as bargain and sale had anything to do. But soon the steeples called good people all to church and chapel, and away they came, flocking through the streets in their best clothes and with their gayest faces. And at the same time, there emerged from scores of by-streets, lanes, and nameless turnings, innumerable people, carrying their dinners to the bakers' shops. The sight of these poor revelers appeared to interest the spirit very much, for he stood with Scrooge beside him in a baker's doorway, and taking off the covers as their bearers passed, sprinkled his incense on their dinners from his torch. It was a very uncommon kind of torch, for once or twice when there were angry words between some dinner carriers who had jostled each other, he shed a few drops of water on them from it, and their good humor was restored directly, for they said it was a shame to quarrel upon Christmas Day. And so it was. God love it, so it was. The office was closed in a twinkling, and Scrooge, with his thin lips blue, went homeward to his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern. Having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms, in a lowering pile of building up a yard, where it had so little business to be, that one could scarcely help fancying it must have run there when it was a young house, playing at hide-and-seek with other houses, and forgotten the way out again. It was old enough now, and dreary enough, for nobody lived in it but Scrooge, the other rooms being all let out as offices. The yard was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. The fog and frost so hung about the black old gateway of the house that it seemed as if the genius of the weather sat in mournful meditation on the threshold. Now it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door, except that it was very large. It is also a fact that Scrooge had seen it, night and morning, during his whole residence in that place. Also, that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London, even including, which is a bold word, the corporation, aldermen, and livery. Let it also be borne in mind that Scrooge had not bestowed one thought on Marley, since his last mention of his 7 years dead partner that afternoon. And then let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any intermediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Marley's face. It was not in impenetrable shadow as the other objects in the yard were, but had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. The hair was curiously stirred, as if by breath or hot air, and, though the eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless. That, and its livid color, made it horrible. But its horror seemed to be in spite of the face and beyond its control, rather than a part of its own expression. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. To say that he was not startled, or that his blood was not conscious of a terrible sensation to which it had been a stranger from infancy, would be untrue. But he put his hand upon the key he had relinquished, turned it sturdily, walked in, and lighted his candle. He did pause with a moment's irresolution before he shut the door, and he did look cautiously behind it first, as if he half expected to be terrified with the sight of Marley's pigtail sticking out into the hall. But there was nothing on the back of the door except the screws and nuts that held the knocker on, so he said, "Pooh, pooh," and closed it with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above, and every cask in the wine merchant's cellars below, appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs, slowly too, trimming his candle as he went. You may talk vaguely about driving a coach and six up a good old flight of stairs, or through a bad young Act of Parliament. But I mean to say, you might have got a hearse up that staircase and taken it broadwise, with the splinter bar towards the wall and the door towards the balustrades, and done it easy. There was plenty of width for that, and room to spare, which is perhaps the reason why Scrooge thought he saw a locomotive hearse going on before him in the gloom. Half a dozen gas lamps out of the street wouldn't have lighted the entry too well, so you may suppose that it was pretty dark with Scrooge's dip. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for that. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, a small fire in the grate, spoon and basin ready, and the little saucepan of gruel. Scrooge had a cold in his head upon the hob. Nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual. Old fireguard, old shoes, 2 fish baskets, washing stand on 3 legs, and a poker. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. Double-locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus, secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. It was a very low fire indeed, nothing on such a bitter night. He was obliged to sit close to it and brood over it before he could extract the least sensation of warmth from such a handful of fuel. The fireplace was an old one, built by some Dutch merchant long ago, and paved all round with quaint Dutch tiles, designed to illustrate the scriptures. There were Cains and Abels, Pharaoh's daughters, queens of Sheba, angelic messengers descending through the air on clouds like featherbeds, Abraham's, Belshazzar's, apostles putting off to sea in butter boats, hundreds of figures to attract his thoughts. And yet that face of Marley, 7 years dead, came like the ancient prophet's rod and swallowed up the whole. If each smooth tile had been a blank at first, with power to shape some picture on its surface from the disjointed fragments of his thoughts, there would have been a copy of old Marley's head on every one. "Humbug," said Scrooge, and walked across the room. After several turns, he sat down again. As he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in the room, and communicated for some purpose now forgotten with a chamber in the highest story of the building. It was with great astonishment, and with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound. But soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. This might have lasted half a minute or a minute, but it seemed an hour. The bells ceased as they had begun, together. They were succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Scrooge then remembered to have heard that ghosts in haunted houses were described as dragging chains. The cellar door flew open with a booming sound, and then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below. Then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. "It's humbug still," said Scrooge. "I won't believe it." His color changed, though, when, without a pause, it came on through the heavy door, and passed into the room before his eyes. Upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up, as though it cried, "I know him, Marley's ghost," and fell again. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots, the tassels on the latter bristling like his pigtail, and his coat skirts, and the hair upon his head. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long, and wound about him like a tail, and it was made, for Scrooge observed it closely, of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. Scrooge had often heard it said that Marley had no bowels, but he had never believed it until now. "No, nor did he believe it even now," said Scrooge in answer to his own thought, though he looked the phantom through and through, and saw it standing before him, though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes, and marked the very texture of the folded kerchief bound about its head and chin, which wrapper he had not observed before. He was still incredulous, and fought against his senses. "How now?" said Scrooge, caustic and cold as ever. "What do you want with me?" "Much." Marley's voice, no doubt about it. "Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Who were you, then?" said Scrooge, raising his voice. "You're particular for a shade." He was going to say, "to a shade," but substituted this as more appropriate. "In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley." Can you sit down?" asked Scrooge. looking doubtfully at him. "I can." "Do it, then." Scrooge asked the question because he didn't know whether a ghost so transparent might find himself in a condition to take a chair, and felt that in the event of its being impossible, it might involve the necessity of an embarrassing explanation. But the ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace, as if he were quite used to it. "You don't believe in me," observed the ghost. "I don't," said Scrooge. "What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?" "I don't know," said Scrooge. "Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because," said Scrooge, "a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are." Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel in his heart by any means waggish then. The truth is that he tried to be smart, as a means of distracting his own attention and keeping down his terror. For the specter's voice disturbed the very marrow in his bones. To sit, staring at those fixed, glazed eyes in silence for a moment, would play, Scrooge felt, the very deuce with him. There was something very awful, too, in the specter's being provided with an infernal atmosphere of its own. Scrooge could not feel it himself, but this was clearly the case, for though the ghost sat perfectly motionless, its hair and skirts and tassels were still agitated as by the hot vapor from an oven. "You see this toothpick?" said Scrooge, returning quickly to the charge for the reason just assigned, and wishing, though it were only for a second, to divert the vision's stony gaze from himself. "I do," replied the ghost. "You are not looking at it," said Scrooge. "But I see it," said the ghost, notwithstanding. "Well," returned Scrooge, "I have but to swallow this, and be for the rest of my days persecuted by a legion of goblins, all of my own creation. Humbug, I tell you, humbug." At this, the spirit raised a frightful cry, and shook its chain with such a dismal and appalling noise that Scrooge held on tight to his chair to save himself from falling in a swoon. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head, as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. "Mercy," he said. "Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me?" "Man of the worldly mind," replied the ghost, "do you believe in me or not?" "I do," said Scrooge. "I must. But why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?" "It is required of every man," the ghost returned, "that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow-men, and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. It is doomed to wander through the world. Oh, woe is me! And witness what it cannot share, but might have shared on earth and turned to happiness." Again the spectre raised a cry, and shook its chain and wrung its shadowy hands. "You are fettered," said Scrooge, trembling. "Tell me why." "I wear the chain I forged in life," replied the ghost. "I made it link by link and yard by yard. I girded it on of my own free will, and of my own free will I wore it. Is its pattern strange to you?" Scrooge trembled more and more. "Or, would you know," pursued the ghost, "the weight and length of the strong coil you bear yourself? It was full as heavy and as long as this, 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a ponderous chain." Scrooge glanced about him on the floor, in the expectation of finding himself surrounded by some 50 or 60 fathoms of iron cable. But he could see nothing. "Jacob," he said imploringly. "Old Jacob Marley, tell me more. Speak comfort to me, Jacob." "I have none to give," the ghost replied. "It comes from other regions, Ebenezer Scrooge, and is conveyed by other ministers to other kinds of men. Nor can I tell you what I would. A very little more is all permitted to me. I cannot rest, I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me." "It was no doubt very dull and tedious," observed Scrooge. "Dull and tedious," echoed the ghost. "It was my business. Business. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business." It held up its chain at arm's length, as if that were the cause of all its unavailing grief, and flung it heavily upon the ground again. "At this time of the rolling year," the spectre said, "I suffer most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down, and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me?" Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the spectre going on at this rate, and began to quake exceedingly. "Hear me," cried the ghost. "My time is nearly gone." "I will," said Scrooge, "but don't be hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob. Pray. How it is that I appear before you in a shape that you can see, I may not tell. I have sat invisible beside you many and many a day. It was not an agreeable idea." Scrooge shivered and wiped the perspiration from his brow. "That is no light part of my penance," pursued the ghost. "I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer." "You were always a good friend to me," said Scrooge. "Thank ye." "You will be haunted," resumed the ghost, "by 3 spirits." Scrooge's countenance fell almost as low as the ghost's had done. "Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob?" he demanded in a faltering voice. "It is." I think I'd rather not," said Scrooge. "Without their visits," said the ghost, "you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. "Couldn't I take 'em all at once, and have it over, Jacob?" hinted Scrooge. "Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that, for your own sake, you remember what has passed between us." When it had said these words, the spectre took its wrapper from the table and bound it round its head as before. Scrooge knew this by the smart sound its teeth made when the jaws were brought together by the bandage. He ventured to raise his eyes again, and found his supernatural visitor confronting him in an attitude of perfect melancholy. Its ghostly eyes were fixed upon him. As Scrooge looked, it raised a mournful cry and shook its chain with a dismal and appalling noise, and fled into the darkness, leaving Scrooge in terror. Thank you for joining us tonight on Mr. Sleep's Story. We hope this story has brought you peace, relaxation, and perhaps a bit of holiday cheer. If you enjoyed this bedtime reading, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more soothing stories to help you unwind and drift off to sleep. We'd love to hear your thoughts or suggestions for future tales in the comments below. Until next time, may your nights be restful, your dreams be sweet, and your heart be light. Sleep well, and happy holidays.